Hey everybody, Resident Legal here to give my honest review on Resident Evil Death Island. Today I finally got to see the movie, and I've been waiting to see this for a very long time. This was the movie I've been the most hyped about, and in all honesty, I shit you not, I was more hyped to see this movie than the Oppenheimer that's currently in the theaters, and it's next to impossible to find the tickets. So, anyway, yeah, the movie, if I would have to rate Resident Evil Death Island on a scale from 1 to 10, without a doubt, I'd give it 9 out of 10. It is that good. By far, the best CGI Resident Evil movie I've seen so far, and I've seen all of them, and they were all great. I don't think any of them sucked. I'm kind of surprised that all these movies have like 6 point something reviews on IMDb, and like even this movie has like 6.1, which is pretty low. And I've enjoyed every second of this movie. It's what I've always wanted to see. We got the whole Resident Evil Avengers theme. We have the return of Jill Valentine. We have the old school zombies. We have the lickers. We have so many great things. People are usually not blown away by the villains of these movies, but I didn't mind the villain of this movie. I think he did alright. I mean, I'm not going to try to spoil anything, but a villain is a villain. I mean, all these Resident Evil villains, they kind of all have this one thing in common. They underestimate their enemies, and, they're kind of their own downfall, so to speak. And the evil lady from the previous Resident Evil movie, Vendetta, the one who looks like Nina from Tekken, is back. And she's also kicking ass in this movie. She had a great fight scene with Leon, and, I don't mind the villains. I don't know why so many people complain. I personally like them. They're not perfect. I mean, there's some elements that I didn't like about them, but they're passable in my opinion, so they're alright. The action sequences were brilliantly executed. I mean, I was so mind blown because this movie really does Jill justice. Like, this is the movie where Jill really gets to shine, and that hasn't been the case in recent games because she has been absent from the games for almost a decade until Resident Evil 3 Remake came out, which was not as well made as the rest of the remakes or the latest games. A lot of content was cut. We didn't really get to experience the Resident Evil 3 Remake narrative like we did in the original. And that's something I'll never forgive Capcom because they really could have made Resident Evil 3 Remake to be a way better game than its original. Like Resident Evil 2, in my opinion, Remake is kind of better than the original. I mean, original has some parts better made, like, but still, Remake I do like a little more than the original. But anyway, back on the subject. This movie delivered, like I've said, because we have the Avengers theme. This is the pretty much the first time ever that we get to see all the characters together. Like, that has never happened in games. We actually hardly even got to see Chris and Claire in the games. That only happened in Code Veronica. In every other game, they're acting on separately. Like, you only come to think of it, recently we didn't even have that many games with Jill and Claire. Like, the last time we get to see Claire was in Resident Evil 2 Remake, and that's like an older experience. Like, Code Veronica was her solo last experience. We really don't get to see her. She was luckily in these CGI movies and the Netflix show. That was also short, but it's something. Like, Jill was never in these movies. And I'm glad Capcom finally came to their senses. They were like, oh yeah, let's finally put her, she's the queen of Resident Evil, let's put her and let's make her sort of the lead of this movie. And she kind of is the lead of this movie. But they all get, decent amount of screen time. They all get to do great things. So the movie actually does justice for everybody, in my opinion. So that's like a massive plus. Maybe what some people won't like about this movie is that some scenes you may, think of them as if, oh man, how the hell did he survive this? I mean, for me, the most unrealistic scene is this is a minor spoiler, is when Leon falls off of his motorcycle, right? And he doesn't even have a helmet on, and he falls, off a bike while he's like going 80, 100 miles per hour on a fucking highway. And I've had my injuries. I used to ride motorcycles. I fell off a motorcycle, and I wasn't even driving a motorcycle that was that fast, and I broke my leg. Like, the way he fucking, hurt himself in the movie was like it was nothing. Like, didn't even have a scratch, and the guy didn't even have a fucking helmet. So, and that was probably the most unrealistic scene, monsters aside and zombies, that I've seen in the movie that I didn't like. But I mean, it's a video. I mean, it's sort of like a video game, so it's like there's gonna be some amount of unrealism, but there are some realistic aspects to this movie. For example, like Jill shows a lot of vulnerability in the other characters too. I mean, Jill has to plan her attacks. She kind of uses the environment into her advantage when she's, battling multiple zombies at once, or when she gets disarmed, she resorts to a knife, and then she has to, you know, carefully maneuver around the zombies in order not to drop her knife. And that's a beautiful thing. Like, I like the fact that, Jill is somebody who can easily be killed, so she's not like, oh, I'm the superwoman, I'm just gonna slay all these zombies John Wick style. She slays zombies, of course, but like two or three at the time, not like a freaking army of them like Chris and Leon did John Wick style in Vendetta, which was also cool. But yeah, okay, I mean, they had automatic weapons, it was two of them. That's believable too, but like here, Jill, usually is armed with a handgun and a knife. And what was kind of interesting is that she was the only one pretty much handling a knife in this movie. Like Leon, I've expected him to have a knife, and the best scene in the movie is when he and Jill come across each other. This movie takes place on an Alcatraz island, so the characters kind of get separate. Like three of them come together: Jill, Claire, and Chris, and then Leon comes on his own way. He didn't take the boat, so I'm kind of curious, how did Leon got? Did he use like a mini fucking submarine? Because what's interesting is that this movie reminds me, in some aspects, so much of my favorite movie, The Rock, from 1996, starring Sean Connery, Nicolas Cage, and Ed Harris. And that's the movie that also takes place on an Alcatraz island, and the plot is somewhat similar. It features a fallen soldier who was, not physically fallen, but who is scarred by war, who wants to retaliate on the higher-ups, right? So he's using like some type of bioweapon that he wants to use against the global population. That's the same plot of the Rock movie. And this is why I like it. I love this so much. It reminds me so much of the movie. And basically, that is the story of this movie. If you've seen The Rock, even the ending of this movie is similar to the one of The Rock, And it's just amazing, that's why I love this movie so much. And of course, because it stars my favorite character, Jill Valentine. And boy, she really kicked ass in this one. I think the best part is when she and Leon, like I've said, come across and they have to fight, lickers together, and the way how they coordinate their attacks. It's like a teamwork thing. And Leon has his one-liners, as always, and they're pretty cool. I mean, I like that this is the older version of Leon. So this is Leon in his, late 30s, so he's kind of more mature, And that's kind of cool. I mean, it's explained why Jill still looks young, because the effects of the T-virus slowed down her aging. So, of course, she's going to look, like she's still in her mid-20s. And Rebecca also looks a little bit more mature, and, she's still that good old, quiet, geeky-looking former STARS member, virologist now, and she also saves the day in her own way. And, every character does their own thing for this movie, which is very impressive. I mean, Chris was pretty much same old, but I can tell he also kind of aged, kind of has a few gray hairs here and there. Claire also looks mature, and it's very nice to see Claire and Chris working together. That's something we haven't seen since Code Veronica, and I'm really saying this movie is great. I mean, there are like very little things that I didn't like about this movie, but overall, it's a brilliant stuff. I think most Resident Evil fans are gonna love this. The story, the action scenes, the conclusion, and it's intense. And the final boss fight of this movie was a very great scene. I mean, it's all teamwork. It's none of the characters are just like a one man, one woman army. Like, they really work together to survive these harsh circumstances. And the final scene also really reminded me of The Rock, when Nicolas Cage and Sean Connery are about to go their separate ways. And, in this movie, Chris walks up to Jill and he's like, I'm glad you're back. And they like fist bump, and she says, I'm glad too. And, that means that she's probably going to appear in the future games, maybe in more of these movies, which is great, because think of it from a logical perspective. Like, she ages slow now. So that means she could appear even in some type of futuristic Resident Evil games that take place in the year 2040, 2050, and still looking very young and, very physically, competent and like, physically ready to battle any threats. And I think that's very interesting. And I'm glad that Capcom has decided, you know what, we're gonna make it that she slows at a very slow rate like Wolverine, so we could explain why she looks still very youthful. Because Jill is the oldest Resident Evil female character in Ada Wong. They're the same age. So yeah. And it's kind of nice. You can actually notice that Claire and Rebecca look older than Jill, and that makes sense, right? So that's very well made, and I'm glad that's the case because I really hope that Jill's going to be a part of the future games. She's been away for far too long, and I don't mind Leon and Chris. I really want them to be a part of the future games too, but maybe not in such a great capacity. I would also like to see more of Claire in the future games, and even Rebecca. I mean, I kind of feel like females have been a little more left out, especially because of the Resident Evil 7 and the Village, in which Chris appeared, and you had the new protagonist. I'm not a fan of Resident Evil 7 or the Village. And, Leon has been in the Resident Evil 4 remake. Before that, he's been in so many games. I mean, it would be kind of nice to pause the two of them for a little while and we can focus on the female characters, but we'll see. I mean, overall, the performance of the actors was great. I really love Nicole Tompkins as Jill. She's my favorite Jill so far. I like all versions of Jill in terms of physicality. I don't care what her facial model is. I'm fine with all of them. But Nicole really brings out the emotional side of Jill, and in here you can really see how Jill is, determined, but at the same time, she's scarred because of her previous, you know, tormented experiences, experience of torment coming from Wesker, when during the events of Resident Evil 5. And you could tell she's still suffering from that, but she's holding it together. And, I kind of saw a little bit of anger, but also control within her character in this one. So that kind of reminded me of Judge Dredd from 2012, the Carl Urban film. And she kind of reminds me of a female Judge Dredd, only without the helmet. And, she's there, she's focused, she's a badass, but in a very vulnerable way. Just like Judge Dredd, she gets hurt, and, she has to fall back when it's more than she can chew. So that's the realistic aspect of the character, and that's what I love about Jill Valentine. She's not this girl who can just fucking slay these zombie hordes and kill a bunch of armed guys. Like, she has to fall back when she's, cornered, and when she can't handle it at once. So, she uses tactics, and that's what I love about her. And every single thing about this movie is very entertaining to watch. I hardly recommend everybody to see this movie. You won't be bored. I mean, this movie has been fun for me from start to finish. I don't think there was a single part of this movie where I was like, I think it's boring now. Like, every second was, holding my attention. Like, I didn't even want to blink. It was that good. And I don't think any Resident Evil fan is gonna dislike this movie. Maybe they're not gonna consider it the best, but I personally do when it comes to these CGI ones. And I hope Capcom is gonna make more of these in the future. And this one really is the cherry on the top of the cake for me. And it's so good to see Jill again, and she has to come back to the games too. I mean, I was wondering why Jill couldn't be in the Village, because Nicole Tompkins, who voices her, voiced two different characters in the game, and I was like, why did Capcom miss this opportunity? You have the actress, kind of give Jill the cameo or something, but I guess they were planning for Jill's return to be thanks to this movie. And I think I've also read a trivia online that this movie has been sort of in development during the release of Resident Evil 3 Remake. So once the Resident Evil 3 Remake was released, they kind of already had this idea. Yeah, let's bring Jill Valentine back. Now she has the new, face. Now she has the new voiceover artist. So let's bring her again. And it's going to be fun. So I'm really glad they did that. It's not a game, but I'll take it. I mean, it's better to have Jill like this than not have her at all. I'm sure she'll return at some point, but we'll just have to be patient until Resident Evil 9 comes out. There's a high probability she's going to be in there, not as a main protagonist, but probably as a side character. But we have to wait and see. Overall, the movie you should definitely watch. I don't want to give out too many spoilers. I've already said my piece. Uh, Thank you guys for watching. If you have, I don't expect to get many views, but I just wanted to make this video because I'm a very passionate fan of this franchise and the biggest Jill Valentine fan there is. And this movie was all I ever wanted, and thank you Capcom for making this. I just wish you had made Resident Evil 3 Remake better, but I guess you dropped the ball on that one, but what's done is done. Anyway, Jill Valentine is amazing. She's the best so far, and I can't stop saying that because I really like everything they've done with her. You know, even in Resident Evil 3 Remake, I really liked how Jill was acting and behaving. I mean, the script wasn't the best. There's some aspects of Resident Evil 3 where I was like, nah, this scene could have been played out way better. But overall, like how Nicole Tompkins was performing and how she displayed Jill's emotion and, you know, her determination, it's just brilliant. And I think she's by far the best artist who ever portrayed Jill. I hope she's going to play Jill in years to come. So, yes. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy the movie as much as I have. Take care, guys. Stay safe.